So, my guess is if you're here, you have probably been called dramatic. Perhaps not in those exact words. Maybe it was intense, or maybe it was you're a lot. Maybe it was a look between two colleagues when you reacted to something, a look that maybe you weren't supposed to see, but you did because you see everything. And if that is you, by the way, hi, I'm Claire. This is the Weighted Blanket, and this episode is for you. I got drama queen. That was mine for years in a job I was genuinely very good at and enjoyed. And I want to offer you a different word for what we actually are, because a report landed on my desk this month, and it's proper research. It's by Birkbeck, University of London, and buried in it is a number that literally made me put my tea down. And by the way, if you are over on YouTube and you have been called dramatic, or you're on Spotify, please put in the comments, just say you're not alone. 61% of neurodivergent people who leave corporate life say they would never, ever go back. 61%. And I don't think that's because we're dramatic. So today I want to talk about work. Yay! Not parenting for once. Us, the versions of us that sit in offices and on Teams calls, and we're masking our way through the performance reviews. And I'm going to tell you a few very personal stories about how I got my reputation. And honestly, now it is really funny. But in that moment, it really, really wasn't. And I'm also going to show you what this new research actually found, because some of it's genuinely stopping me in my tracks. And I'm going to be really honest about the complicated bit, because I'm still in a corporate job and I do, again, love my corporate job. And I'm also building this. And the report has things to say about people like me that I'm kind of still sitting with. So I'm in a complicated spot right now. But if you've ever left a meeting and cried in your car, or potentially cried to your director, that happened quite recently to me, this one is definitely for you. So yeah, it might be a bit lighthearted. I really hope that you like it. And if it does, please just let me know by supporting the channel. Give me a follow over on Spotify. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. And if you see clips of this over on other places, please follow me. But let me tell you about this particular day that I earned my reputation. This was a previous workplace. Years before my diagnosis, I had been working towards a promotion. And I don't mean hoping for one, I mean promised, actually promised. And in fact, I was doing the job, the next roll up, for the best part of 6 months. I had no uplift, no title. It was just me doing the job because I'd been told it was all sorted, and in good faith and possibly a neurodiverse flaw or perk, I'm not sure, it depends in the situation, I trusted that person, and they then actually left the business. And they left honestly believing that it was all squared away. So I want to be fair to that person, because I don't want anyone thinking that this person was a villain, because they weren't. But a few weeks later, another manager called me, and I can still hear the tone of it. It was a really awkward phone call, and it was, "I'm really sorry. There is no funding for the position. You'll be staying where you are." So 6 months of doing this job, a few months before my maternity leave, and nothing. Now, what I probably should have done, what the unwritten manual says you do, is nod and say, "I understand. thank you for letting me know, and go quietly and sit in the kitchen and be devastated near a kettle like a average professional person. Perhaps cry by the lifts. We've all been there as well. Cried in the lifts, on the lifts, everywhere. But what I actually did, I held it together, to be fair, on this call. But I stood up, I walked out of the office, and if anyone that worked with me on this day is watching this, you will know exactly this moment. And I walked out of that office, and no word of a lie, this is no exaggeration, there was a full-on Beyoncé march, catwalk style, down this corridor, past a colleague. And if you are listening, you do know who you are. And I said, and I quote, I'm going to have to do the dramatic voice now, "You may never see me again." You may never see me again. Like I was leaving for war. It was insane and perhaps a little bit intense. And I got in my car. I unlocked it. I sat in the driver's seat and I braced, arms out in front. I gripped that steering wheel so tightly and just held on. And because of it, it wasn't drama. And actually, my colleague, who I told very dramatically, "You will never see me again," was like, "What on earth has happened?" and came running after me and kind of just calmed me down a bit. But because it wasn't drama, that's the thing. And I don't remember sitting there thinking, "Claire, what is wrong with you? Why can't you just take these things like everyone else? Why can't you just take these things like everyone else?" And the answer, it turns out, and it took me quite a few years and a diagnosis to learn this, was nothing. Nothing was wrong with me. I felt it. I couldn't hide it. That's it. That is the whole scandal. But moments like that, they do get you a name, don't they? And drama queen, slightly eccentric. I mean, I did also describe my outfits to colleagues as things like library chic. So I'll hold my hands up to perhaps the eccentric. And people who have worked closely with me saw all of it. Yeah, the eccentric, but also like the fact that I might have a meltdown over a pork pie because I went into a shop not really knowing what I wanted, feeling really overwhelmed, leaving with a handful of stuff that doesn't go together, and then having to have a cry about it after. But also on the flip side of that, I was efficient, I was methodical, I was so on top of things. And both are true at the same time, the competence and the intensity. But only one of them seems to give you the reputation that sticks. And here's the reframe that I want to hand to you, because I've thought about this a lot. And when people call me dramatic, it wasn't because they were being cruel. It was because they were reading my outsides with a dictionary written for a different kind of brain. Not because they didn't care, but because nobody had ever taught them that there was another dictionary. And by the way, I still have a great relationship with all of these people, and I think they love me for my eccentric drama queen like qualities, and honestly I'm not even embarrassed about them anymore. And yeah, but we don't really tell people how that kind of goes. And I read a story in the news this week, and as I was preparing for this episode, and that's the exact mirror of mine. The BBC covered a man called Ryan Toghill, a deputy store manager with ADHD. He was dismissed after a disciplinary, and part of what was held against him was that he showed, quote, "a lack of remorse," except he describes it himself. His face and his voice just don't move much. So whatever he's feeling, he could be devastated and you wouldn't know. A tribunal found the process hadn't accounted for his ADHD at all. And he was awarded over £45,000. And I just thought, look at the two of us. He got punished for showing too little. I got labelled for showing too much, and completely opposite faces. Exactly the same misreading. And that's because the dictionary only has one correct amount of feeling in it. And it's whatever a neurotypical middle manager finds comfortable. And this is happening at scale, by the way. This isn't just two anecdotes. One of the UK's biggest law firms counted employment tribunal cases mentioning neurodivergent conditions at 265 in 2020. By last year, it was up to 517. So we've nearly doubled in 5 years. And that's not because we've got more dramatic. It's because we stopped assuming that we were the problem. So the report, Neurodiversity in Business and Birkbeck, University of London, their 2026 research, over 400 neurodivergent employees, and for the first time, over 100 neurodivergent people who had left corporate life entirely. Entrepreneurs, freelancers, the self-employed, people who opted out. And I want to give you an honest tour because some of these numbers are validating and some of these numbers are genuinely a bit uncomfortable. And the one everyone will quote is the 61% of neurodivergent people who left corporate work say they wouldn't go back. Not probably wouldn't. And nearly half of them worked out they were neurodivergent before they left, which tells you something, doesn't it? You get the diagnosis, you get the language, and suddenly you can see the shape of the thing that's been exhausting you. And for a lot of people, the next thing I think is, I just can't unsee this. But here's the finding underneath that one, and I think it really, really matters. The researchers measured psychological safety, which is basically a fancy phrase for a simple thing. Can you be yourself at work without it costing you? Can you say, I'm struggling, without it ending up in a drawer somewhere with your name on it? Psychological safety turns out to be the single strongest driver of whether neurodivergent people are well, satisfied, and whether they stay. The strongest above everything else they measured, and it has not improved since they first measured it in 2023. And if you're in corporate, you know, there will be awareness weeks, there will be lanyards, there will be LinkedIn posts, and the thing that actually keeps us flat, there's more. Nearly 4 in 10 neurodivergent employees have now been given a return to office mandate. And of those, 53%, more than half, said it made them reconsider whether to stay at all. The data ties those mandates to lower engagement, lower career satisfaction, and of course, a higher rate of burnout. And of course, I understand why businesses want people back in buildings. I genuinely do. That's what I do. I literally look after the buildings that people are supposed to be in it. And big companies are paying a lot of money for these high-rise buildings in London, and they want people in there to fill them. But if the room is the thing that costs you the best people, the room has a cost too. So someone somewhere needs to also be adding that up. And then I guess this bit here is the bit that really, it made me sit back. It really made me think. They compared the people who stayed with the people who left. Yeah, that's a bit more interesting now, isn't it? So we're now looking at the entrepreneurs, the freelancers. They had much higher psychological safety, higher well-being, higher engagement, and significantly lower burnout. On every single measure, the people who had walked away from their corporate life, from the structures, are doing better than the people still inside. Now, I'm not saying everyone should just suddenly pack up and walk away from there. Now, I want to be careful here because I promised you honest, not motivational. The researchers flagged themselves that people who've leapt may also talk up their leap. I left there, therefore it must be working. And the same report says that 60% of those self-employed people are also dealing with, unpredictable work. And most of them are juggling their capacity with no backup. And 13% flat out said it was significantly harder than they had expected. So please do not mistake me. This is not, hi guys, quit your job content. Please hear that, because I am in corporate and I have 3 children and I have a mortgage, and I am the last person on earth who would tell you to jump without a net. Because I haven't done that either. But I think what I take from this is it was never that we can't work. It's we can't work like that. Give a neurodivergent person the ability to shape the job around their actual brain. The research calls it job crafting, molding the task, the hours, the way you work, and it turns out matters nearly 4 times more for engagement than almost anything else an employer can offer. 4 times. So it's not saying we need beanbags and a lanyard. We just need the mold to be a bit softer. And whilst you're here, and if you've made it midway through, one small ask: if this episode is helping you, the kindest thing you can do for this little channel is completely free. A like, a follow, a comment if you've got 30 seconds, or honestly, the best one of all, send it to the person who came to mind whilst you've been listening. Somebody probably did that for you once, and that's how this finds people who really need it. Now, here's where I have to be honest about my own situation. So, because it doesn't fit neatly on either side of the research, and I think potentially a lot of you will be in the same in-between place. I'm still employed, and my current employer, I want to say this really clearly, has been genuinely good to me on this. When I interviewed there, I wasn't diagnosed, but I was in the assessment process for one of my boys at the time, and I remember sort of slipping it into my interview almost as a bit of a joke. That'll be my ADHD tendencies. And before I had any paperwork or anything to my name, and I guess I was testing the water, I suppose, seeing what their face did and what they actually had, and I didn't know this when I joined, was actually a proper neurodiversity pathway, free for anyone who works there. And I went through that, and my eldest also went through it. We both had our diagnoses within around 6 to 8 weeks, roughly. 6 to 8 weeks. I need you to sit with that number, because can you remember those NHS waiting lists for ADHD and autism assessments in England? They are currently at record levels right now, and there are areas where the lists aren't just long, they've actually closed them. So there's actually research in the Lancet Regional Health Europe, and they They estimate that whilst around 1.2% of adults in England have an ADHD diagnosis, yes, so when they're telling you, by the way, oh, everyone's got ADHD now, no, it's 1.2%, by the way. The international data suggests that actually it's around 3 to 5% of us that actually have ADHD. So, yeah, maybe not as trend-setting as we all think with all our disabilities and struggles, but hey, there we go. Most of us are still actually walking around undiagnosed, working twice as hard to look normal. And King's College London research suggests that around 90% of autistic people over 40 have never been diagnosed at all. 90%, a whole generation who just think they're bad at being people, they're bad at the normal. And I skipped that queue because of where I happen to work, and my son skipped it too. And I hold real gratitude for that in one hand. And on the other hand, a kind of quiet fury that it took to have a lucky employer to get us what a decade of GP visits couldn't do. And here's my honesty bit. Dun, dun, dun. Even there, even with that pathway, even with an employer that tries, work only really found out about my ADHD when I burnt out this year, like properly burnt out, not tired, the kind where the engine doesn't turn over at all, because my job is so reactive. It's firefighting, it's all sirens. And I'd always thought I'd loved that. And now, post-diagnosis, I can see exactly why. It's a dopamine machine. And my brain, it runs on dopamine like other people's run on routine. The job suits my brain right up until the moment that it eats it. And that's the Birkbeck finding, walking around in my actual life. The burnout risk they measured isn't about weakness, it's about cognitive load, it's about inconsistent support and structures that just don't flex. And I'd add one from experience. It's about being brilliant at a job that's quietly overclocking you and nobody notices, including you. Since I've come back from that burnout, my workplace has honestly been so supportive. Adaptations, proper conversations, actually asking what helps, and they've done it. So none of this is a criticism of them. The support was real and it was there, but the perceived safety, my belief that I could put my hand up and say, I'm struggling before it all fell apart, that for me, that wasn't there. And it wasn't that they would not have been receptive. Yeah, and I think actually it was more my RSD, because I was so afraid that they would find out that I was there and I was a phony, despite actually being genuinely really, really good at my job and putting my all into it. So yeah, and that it just wasn't there for me. And what the report means by psychological safety, it's not whether your employer would be kind if you told them, it's whether you believe enough to tell them in time. And I didn't. And the honest truth is, if I'd had those conversations earlier, maybe I would have never got into that state at all. And I say that with absolutely no judgment of anyone that is listening who hasn't said it out loud at work, because it is genuinely so hard to come out publicly and say, my brain works differently. And it took my engine to fully cut out, to just so completely before I did. And that's not a flaw in us. That's a gap. That's the gap the research is measuring. So this bit now brings me to the bit that I really haven't said ever directly. The weighted blanket isn't just an awareness project for me. I'm building it for two reasons. And the second one is a selfish one. I want to become more self-reliant. I want a working life where on the low energy days, and if you have ADHD, you know those days I mean, I can plan something around my own battery rather than apologizing for it. That's it. That's the dream. Not a yacht, a Tuesday that bends. And when I read that the report section on what leavers wished they'd known, honestly, it was like reading my own plan back to myself, written by 122 strangers. Build a financial buffer first. Secure the income before you leap, and then transition gradually. Don't jump. Leave environments that don't fit your brain sooner than feels polite. And if I've actually got an 18-month roadmap pinned up that says almost these exact words. I didn't get that from a business book. I got it from every neurodivergent instinct in my body saying, do not jump without a net. Claire, you know what your brain does to nets. And my favourite finding in the entire 83 pages, do you know what the number one reported challenge of self-employment was for neurodivergent people? It was not the money, is the first clue. It was not the loneliness. It was maintaining a social media profile. 66%, the single hardest part of escaping the system for brains like ours, is the posting. And I genuinely laughed when I read it because I have built myself an army of AI assistants for precisely that reason. And there's a whole team of them scheduling and drafting whilst I do the school run. The robots do the posting so I can do the talking. 66% of us struggle with the shop window, and I've automated the window. So if you're self-employed and you're drowning in the posting, you're not lazy. You're in the majority, and it's allowed to be the thing that you get help with. But I promised you the fear as well. So here it is. I know my brain, and I know what it does when it finds something that it loves. It goes all in, 24/7, hyper-focused, the whole thing. And there is a version of this story where I escape a burnout machine and lovingly, brick by brick, build myself a new one, where there's no manager mandating anything, because the manager is me. And guess what? She is significantly worse. The research says that leavers struggle most with working to their capacity, with unpredictability, with boundaries, all the things that are already my weather. So no, I don't have a neat answer to that yet. I'm building the boundaries alongside the thing that some weeks things win. And I'll tell you honestly how that goes. That's kind of the whole point of this podcast. But so before I go, if anything today has hit home, I've made a free little thing that I think you might like. It's helped me a lot. And it's called a 2-circle reset. It's a 5-minute way to put something down when you're carrying too much, and it's in the show notes and the link in my bio, and it's the easiest way to make sure you also don't miss out on what's coming up next. And today I'm on square number 52 of the blanket this week, by the way. 52 squares means there is 52 of you, and actually there is significantly more of that now across all of my social media platforms, so I can't actually keep up, and I know exactly whose squares they are. So, and if any of this has landed for you today, if you recognized yourself in it or someone you love, I'd genuinely love to hear from you. Come and find us over in the Weighted Blanket community over on Facebook. Drop me a message, and you just don't have to have anything figured out yet. It's just a come as you are kind of a place. And there is one question that I'm asking every guest on this podcast, and I really want to ask it of you too. What do you wish someone had told you about yourself or someone that you love before you had to figure it out the hard way? Come and tell me in the community or the comments. I'd genuinely love to know. And actually, one specific invitation for this week. If you've got a reputation story, a drama queen story, a lack of remorse story, a thing that went in a review that was just really your brain just being visible, bring it to the community. I'll go first. I've already told you mine. You may never see me again. And guess what? I stand by it. That here's where I've landed. And I'm saying this as much to myself as I am to you. That's 61%, the ones who never go back. I don't think they're running away from work. I think they're running towards the version of work that should have been possible all along. The report calls it neurodiversity gain. And the idea is that when you redesign work so our brains can function, everybody's work gets better. And whether you're building your escape or staying or fighting for better from the inside or just getting through a week's meetings with your mask on, you're not failing at a normal thing. You're doing an abnormal thing, working in a world with only one dictionary while carrying a second one that nobody taught anyone how to read. You're not alone, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.